To understand the fire, we have to rewind 5 winters to 1850. Robert Newsom was a recent widower and a prosperous farmer in Callaway County. He owned 800 acres of land, livestock, and 5 male slaves. But with his wife gone, he needed someone for domestic labor, and, as it would become brutally clear, to warm his bed. The law of the land gave him the right to purchase a human being for both purposes. He rode into neighboring Audrain County with $600 in his pocket and returned with 14-year-old Celia. It's likely the first assault happened on the journey back to his farm. The bill of sale carried no last name for her, only a brief, dehumanizing description. Accustomed to hard work. Newsom installed her not in the main house with his daughters, but in a one-room cabin he built for her about 50 yards away, close enough for convenient access. He may have done this to keep his activities hidden from his family, or to isolate Celia from the other enslaved men on the farm. Within a month, he began a relentless pattern of nightly sexual assault. Before she was even 16, Celia gave birth to her first child, a daughter, almost certainly Newsom's. A second child, also his, followed 2 years later. Each time she endured this, she asked him to stop. Each time he held a terrifying power over her. Under Missouri slave codes, her children inherited her status as property. He could sell them just as easily as he had bought their mother. 5 calendar years. That translates to nearly 2,000 nights of violation. Celia's life was a grueling routine of cooking, hoeing corn, and milking cows, all lived under the constant dread of hearing Newsom's footsteps outside her cabin door. But then, a man named George arrived. He was another of Newsom's slaves, and a secret relationship bloomed between him and Celia. He would slip into her cabin when he could, offering a glimpse of affection and a life she could choose. When Celia became pregnant for a third time in early 1855, the father could have been Newsom or George. For George, this was the breaking point. He laid down an ultimatum. Tell the old man to stop, or he would be gone from her life forever. Desperate and now suffering from illness related to her pregnancy, Celia made one last appeal to Newsom's humanity. She pleaded with him to leave her alone, at least while she was sick. He dismissed her pleas. Faced with losing the only love she had ever known, and another violation she could not bear, Celia decided she would have to end the visits herself. It was a Saturday. Newsom, ignoring her pleas from earlier, informed Celia that he would be coming to her cabin after dark. That evening, she prepared. She sent her 2 small children to stay with their grandmother. Then, she found a heavy, knotty piece of firewood and placed it by the door. Around 10 o'clock, the cabin door opened. Newsom stepped inside and reached for her. The first blow from the club dropped him to his knees. As he reached for her again, she struck him a second time, and he fell silent and still. Panic, late but ferocious, set in. Her only thought was to erase what she had done. All through the night, she dismembered his body and fed it, piece by piece, into the fireplace. By sunrise, a sickly, unfamiliar smell hung over the entire farm. Needing to dispose of the evidence, she asked Newsom's 12-year-old grandson, Coffee, to take the ashes from her hearth and spread them along a path. She told the boy she had butchered a hog and needed the ash for making soap. He didn't question why the smoke smelled so terribly wrong. By Monday morning, Robert Newsom was officially missing. His grown daughters organized a search. The search party and their dogs were drawn again and again to Celia's cabin. Someone in the search party finally poked at the greasy pile of ash in her fireplace and uncovered the horrifying truth. Small, charred fragments of human bone. On Wednesday, the constable arrived and put Celia in irons. During the interrogation, her story changed. At first, she denied it, but under threat of having her children taken away, she confessed to killing Newsom, but insisted she never meant for him to die. "The devil got into me," she said, a phrase that would be repeated in newspapers. Newsom's family and some in the community wanted a swift, brutal lynching. However, the local prosecutor saw an opportunity for a high-profile trial. On August 16, 1855, a grand jury delivered the indictment for first-degree murder. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Celia was appointed a legal defense team, and it was a formidable one. The lead attorney, John Jameson, was a former U.S. congressman and a respected figure in Missouri politics. He was joined by two younger attorneys, Isaac Boulware and Nathan Counds. In a profound irony, all three men were slave owners themselves. They were not abolitionists, but they were dedicated lawyers who saw a fascinating and potentially groundbreaking legal loophole. Their argument was simple and radical. Missouri Statute 29 stated that it was a crime to take any woman unlawfully against her will, and that using deadly force to prevent such a felony was justifiable. Jameson argued that the statute said any woman, and Celia, their client, was a woman. The law, he contended, should apply to her as it would to any free white woman. The prosecution's counter-argument was chillingly simple. Under the law, Celia was not a woman in the legal sense. She was chattel, property without the right to defend herself from her owner. The judge, William Hall, agreed with the prosecution. He barred the defense from raising the issue of rape or self-defense and instructed the jury that Celia had no right to kill Newsom for any reason. With her motive deemed irrelevant, the verdict was a foregone conclusion. The jury, made up of 12 white men, 4 of whom were slaveholders, deliberated for just 15 minutes before finding her guilty. Her sentence was death by hanging, scheduled for November 16, 1855. Jameson and his team immediately filed an appeal to the Missouri Supreme Court, but Judge Hall refused to stay the execution while the appeal was pending. Then, on November 11th, just 5 days before she was to be hanged, something remarkable happened. Someone, perhaps the jailer's sympathetic wife, or even her own attorneys hoping to force the Supreme Court's hand, left the key forgotten in her cell door. Celia, now heavily pregnant, slipped out into the night. She managed to hide in a hayloft for 2 weeks, but starvation ultimately drove her out. She was spotted, recaptured, and returned to jail. A new execution date was set, December 21st. In a moment of cruel timing, the Missouri Supreme Court issued its denial of her appeal on the very same morning. While in jail, awaiting her fate, Celia gave birth to a stillborn child. The afternoon of December 21st, 1855, was cold and gray. Only a small crowd of about 24 townsfolk gathered in Fulton, Missouri, to witness the execution. There were no grand speeches, no final prayers recorded. At 2:30 p.m., a hood was placed over Celia's head, the noose was tightened, and the platform dropped. She was 19, maybe 20 years old. The final grotesque postscript to her life came in February of the following year. Her 2 surviving daughters, the very children whose lives had been used as leverage against her, were auctioned off to help cover the costs of her trial. Celia's individual act of defiance did not topple the institution of slavery, but her case lodged itself in the conscience of the nation like a splinter of bone. Newspapers from Boston to London picked up the story, forcing a debate on an uncomfortable question. Was an enslaved woman a woman? Her trial exposed the monstrous contradiction at the heart of the slave system. A person could be treated as property in life, but held fully accountable as a human being in death. Historians still debate the details. Did George help her? Did neighbors suspect more than they let on? Yet the core fact remains unshakable. A teenager, stripped of every legal and social protection, fought back against unspeakable abuse with the only weapon she had left: